So you can say I'm copying James Corden with
Oh, so yeah.
carpool
All
karaoke.
right. We're
All right.
live now. I'm here with Karvin Cheung. I'm very excited to have him on the show. For those that don't know, Karvin is a legend in the hobby, especially in the hockey card world, where he was the mind behind the Cup, which is still to this day is the most high-end hockey card product of all time. So we're taking a break here at the Hockey Cards Roundtable. I know we were doing a hiatus for the off season, but Karvin was gracious enough to come on here and do a one-on-one interview with me. So very excited to have him. We're going to, I know he's done a number of interviews in the past, but I wanted to have one that was really just hockey card focused. Karvin, if you want to start off, just kind of, let everyone know, how you kind of got to be the guy to make the Cup at Upper Deck.
Well, first off, thank you for having me on. And let me state that I guess I'm doing something from the late show or whatever with James Corden, having a podcast in the car instead of being in the studio or in an office setting. So I apologize for the unusual surroundings, but yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of years since I actually created some products, and the Cup hockey was during my tenure. I started at Upper Deck in 2001. My tenure ended in 2010. And at that time, I was responsible from day one, walking in and creating products, all the products for hockey and basketball for the first year. I think I left the second year for hockey, focused on basketball, and then came back during the lockout year in 04, 05. And from that point on, I worked on hockey till the day I left the company. And then, so the Cup was part of the creations that was under my tenure. Similar in basketball, the most famous product that I worked on was Exquisite. So, and of course, if you look at Cup and Exquisite, you'll see a lot of similarities in those two products. So, and I'm sure you're aware of that. I'm sure most hockey collectors are knows that. So interesting that just we met during the national, and a lot of the hype was on Exquisite. But it's first off, I'm Canadian, so hockey is like in my blood, and I have. Not only do I carry a red maple leaf, I carry a blue maple leaf. So obviously, unfortunately, I have not seen the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, and hopefully one of these days, one of these years, I will. Versus not seeing it, so a little bit painful to be a Maple Leaf fan or a Toronto fan in general. But either way, love talking about hockey anytime I can. Love going to the expo when I get a chance to go home. Maybe I will attend this year. I'm still in debating on it, whether I go back or not to Toronto. Obviously, that is my hometown, so my family's all there. Maybe I'll just come in for a quick visit. So a couple of things, like my daughter's birthdays at the same time at the expo. So if I don't bring her along, then I have to get rushed back here to be here for her birthday, her 5th birthday. So a couple of challenges, but I hope to get back there as well.
Yeah. So maybe before we kind of dive into the Cup, were there any other products at Upper Deck for hockey that you were kind of the mind behind those products?
There's quite a bit. I mean, quite a bit I brought back when I went in 2001, the first actual product on hockey I did was the second year of SP Game Used. And sorry about that. My phone just dropped. Anyways, the SP Game Use is one of my favorite sets that I ever produced back in 01-2. I think it was groundbreaking, and a lot of numbering, a lot of dual, triples. I think I did quads in that, and it was the first time at Upper Deck that anyone did those cards, including like double signed patches. I think that was the extent of it. And I remember doing the set and the designers there. So, well, first off, I'm known as the architect. So I conceptualized the idea, give some basis of the overall design that I'd like to see. Do I want to see is horizontal, hard signs, sticker autographs, and I understand the discussion in regards to sticker autographs, and I can give you all the pros and cons. Obviously, I'm very pro on card autograph, like most collectors are. But with that being said, it was the first time we did a triple card, I believe, or a quad card, and the graphic designers designed the cards. Go, how are you going to do this? We can't even fit on the card. I'm like, well, we just got to be a little bit more creative in cutting the jersey swatch or the patches, right? At that time, it was 1x1 that people went by. So obviously, you couldn't do a triple or you couldn't do a quad. So we had to be a little bit creative at that sense or innovative during that time. But with that said, there's a lot of other stuff. I believe Sweet Shot Hockey, even though Sweet Shot was in basketball, that was my first product I worked on in basketball. Was a product that I curated for the hockey sets. Also, I brought back ice in a different format. Worked on even a lot of the McDonald's sets. So anything that was hockey based, I had some sort of like touch. I was involved in the creative process of all the hockey products.
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like at Upper Deck during the NHL lockout? So it's kind of a weird time where hockey wasn't happening, but you guys also got the exclusive license that year. Were you guys did you guys take that kind of as a green light to kind of ramp up and have what a lot of collectors to this day consider 0506 to be one of the best years ever of hockey card products? Did you feel like you kind of had like a little bit of extra lead up time to make those products? Could you speak to that at all?
There was, but I mean, 0405 was a very difficult year. It was a year where we had to be really creative. We had no rookies to work with, if you recall. And in some of the sets, like for example, the Upper Deck 0405, we actually had like players, the missing link rookie cards, right? I believe we had the goalie, I think his name was John Graham, where Daryl Sittler scored 10 points on. He was one of the goalie that let everything in as part of the Boston Bruins. We also had like I believe Frederick Stanley had his first ever Young Guns card. So some of these ideas that you've seen like exist in the hobby afterwards, that was the first year where we started doing some of these ideas where these guys didn't have a trading card at all, and we brought them in as a Young Gun. So there was that kind of a struggle. We had a lot of probably the most iconic legendary sets. I did one called Legendary Signatures, and that was well received. We actually had a lot of the 1972 Summit Series stars sign autographs in that. Also, the famous lines in hockey back in the day. So in the 70s, it was famous for the lines similar to like the Legion of Boom for the Philadelphia Flyers, but we had like the French Connection, we had the Toronto Maple Leaf sign, Detroit. I can't even remember. The production line was one of them with Gordie Howe. So we did a bunch of the lines, but it was more of that was the kind of like I grew up in the 70s watching hockey, so it was more of my time where I can say, oh, I know this player. Like I know who Rick Sealing was, or I knew who Ian Turnbull for the Maple Leafs was, and it's just it was a time for me to reflect on my childhood and I believe that a lot of the collectors, not maybe the collectors of today, but collectors of the 2000s and 90s, grew up at the same time that I did. So it kind of resonated with them. We also did the Miracle Men set in that too. So we had all the 1980s Olympic gold medal winners signed, with the exception of Mikey Ruzioni, because he doesn't take any money for his autograph after retiring from 1980 from the Olympic team. I don't know if he does. I think he has signed since then, but back then he refused to sign. But we had everyone else, whether it's Steve Kristoff, and I think was it Aaron Broughton was another one that was on the team, and Dave Christian. So a lot of the 1980s, Miracle Men, we called it. So there's challenges with involving the 5 rings or the copyright and a lot of costs. So we just called Miracle Man instead in that subset. So those are a couple of sets. And then in the SP Authentic, SP Authentic was a huge challenge. And it's probably sometimes I take this challenge and come up with creative ideas to introduce rookies. And I didn't realize how much of a challenge it was. So the idea for SP Authentic in 0405, because we had no rookies, was to basically do buybacks of all the rookies that happened in the past. So you had buybacks of Jason Spetz's rookie from 0203. We bought back and we reintroduced them in SP Authentic. Then we also had obviously the legendary players, the current players that can sign in Sign of the Times, but we also bought back, previously issued buybacks again of signature cards, and we introduced it and we doubled up the content. And I didn't expect even the revenue or the volume to double in size, and I had to run out there and beg all kinds of stores and go out buying buying missions and accommodating the volume. You don't want to turn down volume during a lockout year, so we did that, and that was a task that was just too hard for me to handle for that year. So despite it being a lockout year and less products, it was actually really intensive in terms of acquiring assets and coming up with ideas for the lockout, since we didn't have the rookies. And of course we had the success of Exquisite, so we knew that a product like the cup would work. And also there's all that the whole debate, the cup versus Exquisite name. Why did we go with the cup and why not Exquisite? And if we have an hour or 2 hours, maybe we can discuss that. But I'm not sure if we want to discuss all of that right now.
Yeah, we can get into a lot of topics. So let's
Mhm.
get into the cup. But there are a couple of viewers of the show. I'd like to say hi to them. We got my friend Alex in the house, Jeff McMahon, longtime supporter of the show. Al, he's got one of the best Ginla collections out there. We got Matt, who kind of runs this ship usually. He's got a big Marc-Andre Fleury collector, and then we got Doug, big Pavel Bure guy. So thank all you guys for coming into the live for this. So let's get into the cup. So I remember when 0506 the cup came out. I mean, I was a kid, but I was still a diehard collector at that time. And today, when I hear some people talk about that product, there's a few things that I find a lot of people are not getting right. And I don't know where this misinformation is coming from. So I was just hoping you could, just kind of clarify a few things about the product. So the first thing is, what was the suggested retail price of the cup when it came out in 2006?
Well, so the cup suggested retail was $350 a box. We had the current standard of Exquisite at the time for $500 a box, and then $350 on the cup. Obviously, that's just an SRP. So I think immediately afterwards, the price point was either at that price or a little bit lower, and then immediately shot up. Probably within a week or 2 weeks, it went higher than that.
Yeah, so that's my recollection as well. I see some people online that say like cup was $600 when it came out, and I know that that's not true. So I appreciate you clarifying that. So another thing about 0506 Cup that is unusual, at least compared to all the other years, is that we actually have game used rookie patches with Crosby, Ovechkin, and Mikko Koivu. So that's something that since then we've never had in the RPAs, at least. I know that they've started doing it with limited logos since 2015, and recently with the nameplates that they put in the cup. But can you just talk about why those three players got game used jerseys, and then why that didn't happen again?
Well, so the struggles with game used jerseys, especially for a product that's highly patch intensive like the cup, is the fact that there's not enough jerseys. Think about it this way: if you look at all the jerseys, so the patch yield, the 1x1 yield on a hockey jersey is roughly about, I would estimate, about 120 pieces. And with that, also note that with 120 pieces, probably close to 75 of them are going to be one color, because the majority of your patches are coming from the numbers. So there's two answers to exactly what you're saying. One is the fact that the one jersey is not even going to yield on an average of the cup rookies at 225, and also include, like, there's another question: the limited logos, the authentic patches. So in order to cover the whole spectrum of every single patch, you're probably going to look at 5 to 6 jerseys. Now, to a guy like Connor Bedard, you can say, oh, well, maybe we can get 5 or 6 jerseys. Yes, Connor Bedard. I mean, the Blackhawks are going to be selling those for at least 25 to 30,000 a piece. So you're putting in at least $150,000 cost of just Connor Bedard jerseys, not including any other jerseys. And I can safely say the Blackhawks are one of the most aggressive teams in terms of getting the price for their jerseys, right? At the time, because at the time we're talking about like 2006, 7, and 8, when they were champions and they had Taves and Kane and all that. So they were getting, at that time, $10,000 a jersey. But for a guy like Connor Bedard that plays the whole year, that's great. what about the rookie that skates like 2 games and for 5 minutes a game? That got called up in the first 10 games of the year that they have for the OHL or I guess CHL, right? And they only get the 6 games. How are you going to acquire the next 4 jerseys that are game used? And of note, usually the first ever game used is not available to you. It's given back to the player, or the team keeps it to relish it or put it in their museum. Should this be a big time player, or it could go to the Hall of Fame for all we know. Like, I mean, there are other reasons. So the first 3 or 4 or 5, 6 jerseys might not even be available for sale. So how are you going to acquire them? And that is the struggle that people don't understand, is that we have a time schedule to hit, and we have to acquire the jerseys to get them cut up, send out the cards for, to get signed, hard signed cards. And that's going to be a challenge to keep everything within that schedule. We can't wait on to say, well, this player might play. We got to wait. We can't do that, right? We have to hit certain targets. So by doing a photo shoot or a player worn jersey, at least we have the assets in-house to do it. Now, in the case of Ovechkin, Crosby, and Mikko Koivu, we actually got in the jerseys early enough to be able to accommodate putting him in the product. And I don't even recall giving the okay to use game used jerseys. So it might be oversight of me that happened. I didn't even saw that it was the game used ones that were being used, that it got used. Or perhaps I said, okay, well, maybe for the couple we'll make an exception for it. I know that in discussions with a lot of people, I was like, those are the only 3 game used jerseys that I know that under my tenure that we ever used. And I had to stand to correct myself in basketball, which I thought never happened. We actually had happened in 03-04. And it was the last numbered out of 99. There were 6 players out of 99. And the last one numbered out of 9 was Jonas Haslem. And I was rethinking about it. I said, that must be a game used, because there's no reason that Jonas Haslem was at any photo shoot. So I did a little bit of research, and I realized that is a game used. So, and he goes enormously high. Like he outsells Chris Bosh. It tells you how high he is. But there's a lot of love for him in Miami, and perhaps it's a game used that people are looking at and say, well, maybe I should buy that one card since I'm a Heat fan and I'm willing to pay more for it. I don't know if that is the case. If that's the case, then there's an argument to everything be game used if everyone's willing to pay more for secondary market. But also live with the fact that if you have a game used and you have only 1 or 2 game used, you're going to be getting a lot of single colors. So I think Upper Deck has been making a concerted effort to use more multicolor patches in the cup. Well, that's only going to lead to more photo shoot or player worn jerseys, because you can't acquire the assets fast enough.
So, I also recall that in 05-06 Ultimate, Sidney Crosby has game used memorabilia, and was that also an oversight, or was that intentional?
It's probably I don't really dive into too much of like which one is game used or which jersey is being used. The reason why I'm not a complete huge fan of using game used in the rookie year is that typically I would say in the second year we want to get rid of all the rookie photo shoot stuff. Like it's a good story to have because we can't get the jerseys, but there is no excuse for us not getting any jerseys in the second year of a player, right? So if that was the case and all the rookie jerseys are left over, and I say, hey, let's skip over a photo shoot jersey and using a game used, well, that game used in the second year could be used the third year, fourth year, fifth year. The rookie photo shoot jerseys can never be used in any other time. It has to be used in that first year. So typically I would say, look, I'd rather save the game used for later years. And that's, because we might not be able to get that many game used jerseys. That's a high cost to get those jerseys. But, perhaps I did approve them. I just don't recall. But typically that has been a stance that I've taken, say, hey, we'll use the game used in the second year, because that way we have jerseys immediately to be used, upcoming for future products instead of having to wait for them.
Yeah, and it seems like that's pretty much been the position that Upper Deck has taken since then. Pretty much the only exception is the limited logos for rookies. Now they're pretty much all game used. So probably the question that people asked me the most to ask you is, regarding the two subsets in 0506 the Cup, the limited logos and the emblems of endorsements. So with the limited logos, I know you've mentioned it before. Something, obviously a lot of the autographs look pretty bubbly. And then with the emblems of endorsements, they're all stickers. So a lot of people want to know why both of those sets came out that way.
So I don't recall exactly the reasons why emblems endorsements was all stickers. I know that we did have stickers for, I believe it's called noble numbers or honorable numbers, especially for the dual signed. So anything dual signed, we typically would be using stickers because that year, I mean, that was a crazy year, 0506, because of the double rookie crop, the revenue, the volumes were higher than obviously any other year in hockey, and we didn't anticipate any of that. And I don't even know if people recall in 0506 SP Authentic, that was almost nightmarish because we had so many autographs coming in. We were going to do 2 waves in terms of releases, similar to, I guess, Series 1 that's happened the last few years. They did 2 waves of it, or Series 2. So we're going to do 2 waves of 0506 SP Authentic. And immediately after the first wave, we heard the concern how it wasn't strong enough. So at that point, we took out all the rest of the autographs and put it into 0607. So 0607 had a mixture of 0506 rookies and of course the current guys of like Malkin and Jordan Stahl as part of it. So it was extremely difficult and challenging to collect all the autographs. So I don't know if the emblems of endorsement was because I built it with like honorable numbers. So that's, the dual honorable numbers where it's like signed autographs on stickers. So it was built at a later date. Or perhaps I built it on something that was just mem only and it had to be produced at a later date. So thus we had to use stickers. I just don't recall if that was the case or not. In fact, when I was reminded a couple of years ago that was all stickers, I'm like, I don't even know why I did them all stickers. Why? Because typically I would never do that. There is a price point where the products exist and we say, hey, at that price point, we want it to be all hard signed versus stickers, unless it's multiplayers. So I think that could have been an oversight on my part, or I put the emblems endorsement on a different form where it was produced at a later date. So the only way to accommodate the actual autographs was to be on the stickers. And I had to compromise at that point. For the limited logos, that one is a nightmarish. I think I already talked to you about how nightmarish that was. So in looking at the designs, so every time that we produce a product, we get what we call an engineering date, and the designer comes in with all the designs. And number one, the limited logos was kind of completely different than the whole overall look of the set. Because the overall look set had that metallic look. It was like more cup-like, and that one had that wood grain type framing for the patch, and it was a completely different look. And I was looking at the specs of the design. I said, hey, guys, you guys have UV on this. And a couple of years ago, what we had was we were using, it was called signable UV. So let me explain what that is. So on all the cards, for protective purposes, you'll notice there's a sheen. And in fact, when you bring, like, say, your upper deck cards to get signed by a player, they can't sign on them. The same thing will happen. They'll become bubbled or blotched, and it's because there's a film of UV or ultraviolet film on it, and it kind of protects the card so it doesn't get damaged. So when I first joined Upper Deck, we did what we called something that's called signable UV. So all signable UV is that it's a little bit more dilute version of the UV. However, there's these UV tubes where the UV ink, or not ink, the film goes in, that chemical goes into, and they don't recognize that there's already UV in there, and they're trying to dilute it, pour a whole new dilution in there, but it's actually getting more stronger UV because there's actual UV in the wells. So we've seen this happen before, and lo and behold, when I saw the design for the cup, I said, guys, there's signable UV. And they're like, yeah. I go, we can't have signable UV. It should be just signed on paper. And they all sat there. It's like, come on, Karvin. Like, are you joking? It says signable UV. I go, I know, but we've had issues with signable UV. And then everyone started laughing at me, ridiculing me, saying, "It's signable UV. Why would it not be?" I go, "We've had issues. I'm just telling you." And sure enough, of all things happening, as soon as I got the cards back, the athletes relations people came to me and said, "Hey, Karvin, these are all bubbling." And I was like, "That's great." And there was no way of us going back to the players and getting new cards created and get them signed. So I had to pull all those autographs out. Like the ones that you guys got were the nicest of the bunch. Probably I would say top 25% to top 50% of the cards. Some players signed harder, so they'll look nicer, but a lot of them were just throwaways, and it was disappointing to see that. And, I went back to the design team. I said, "Great." And they said, "Well, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Well, sorry's not good enough. This is costing us money, and when the collectors see it, they're going to be pissed off, and they're going to be calling us. And guess who has to answer the collectors? I do. You guys don't have to." So I was pretty disappointed with the whole situation there.
Can you speak at all to any specifics in terms of which players might have had more of their cards thrown away? Maybe the cards are, more short printed than we realize because for whatever reason that player just none of their autos really came out well. Do you have any recollection of that?
I would say, because I think you guys see a lot of like the Crosbys and Ovechkins, right? Those made it through. I think more or less it's probably the retired players. So probably like the Bobby Hulls and Stan Mikitas, because they don't sign as hard, so it doesn't even penetrate that UV. So I think of all things, I remember there's a lot of nice autographs of the legends that did not do so well. But that's just all from memory. I don't know. I can't quantify it in any sense.
Yeah.
But I would just assume that if they press really lightly, sign lightly, then that's going to happen. And also on top of it, typically with the legends, they all sign full names, right? Where all the current players, current for the back in 0506, they sign really short form. Like, Alexander Ovechkin has a very short autograph, so it might not be as impacted as a big Bobby Hull or a Stan Mikita signs full name, or Marcel Dion or something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I know there's a lot of speculation in the Cup community which cards might actually be a lot more short printed than we know. So speaking of the short prints in that set, there's a lot of the limited logos in particular. A lot of the cards are numbered to like odd numbers, like the Cam Neely out of 4. There's a Zetterberg out of 7. There's a couple cards out of 45. Can you speak at all to how a lot of those cards got these random short prints?
I think it was more or less when we were looking at the availability of patches. We thought that we had more, and at the end, after cutting and everything, then we probably eliminated a lot of those patches, or possibly we just didn't have that many. So it was just organically short printed in that sense. And I think on the cup, don't quote me on this, I think we wanted to be more true in terms of having the right, we didn't want to have Frankenstein patches where it's like multi teams patches on the one picture. We just wanted to make sure we had probably the one team. So in the case of Cam Neely, we might have had like, at least the Bruins and Canucks jersey or something of that nature, and we just wanted to keep it to the one jersey.
Got it. And so there's a lot of cards in that. So the noble numbers, which were those dual signed autograph jersey cards, and then there's also the dual patch with no autograph, also called noble numbers. Those were one-off years. Did you have what was your way of kind of gauging which subsets were going to live on and which subsets were going to just kind of be one-offs? How are you able to back then gauge the success of a subset?
I'm not so sure it was like the success of the subset. I think part of the reason is that in the first year, obviously we knew the numbers were pretty substantial, and in fact, what had happened was that I built this whole set with a lot of these inserts, and thinking that we would hit a certain volume. In fact, so this is at a credit to the team that was involved, not just myself. We were packing out this product. So I don't know if everyone knows that Cup is hand packed, where we actually look at cards and we put them together. to create one pack. We don't create the hits in the case. Sorry. We don't create the hits in the case, and we don't do the collation of the boxes in the case, but we actually look at the per box. So if this is a case hit, we'll balance it properly. If this is a box hit, we'll try to balance it as possible to give maximum or best value or best parity of the value across the board. So in the case of 0506, we were actually hand packing it, and I did the case hits and box hits, and then we realized the product was kind of weak. So we actually take the volume down on it. We took the volume down by about a third of the actual print run. And in that sense, the product was built, with all these different inserts, and they didn't need it the second year then. Sorry about that. So at that point, we just eliminated a lot of the inserts. And a lot of the sets that we eliminated were the dual signed, which is always aggressively, it's an aggressive nature to get them signed twice. And in a perfect year, we wouldn't have them sign on stickers. And then second of all, a lot of the thicker cards. I'm not a huge fan of booklet cards or thick cards, the dual-sided, so that's part of the reason probably.
Yeah. So kind of in a similar vein, there's in 0506 in particular, there are a number of cards that got out that were not on the checklist. And a lot of collectors from those years are, there's a lot of speculation on why they were not put on the checklist. Some people speculate that they might be redemptions, but there were some that were redemptions that were on the checklist and then some that weren't. Can you speak at all to what would cause a card to not be placed on the checklist, even though it was made?
Those are redemption issues. So obviously, we all hate redemptions. I think even to a point where a lot of collectors say, hey, if Sidney Crosby doesn't return his RPAs, we don't want the redemption, right? I mean, I think that's where the pendulum swings, and people are just like, hey, I don't care about the Sidney Crosby RPA. I go, well, I do care. So that would be a redemption. So a couple things that I look at when it comes to cards that are part of the set, like the RPAs, I would always make them a redemption. Okay, but when it comes to limited logos, if we're not going to get the product back in time, then, or the cards back in time, or we don't know when they're going to get signed, then I just take them out of the set. And later on, if they come back in, we didn't have the decision to make. Either we use these for redemption replacements or replacement issues, or we put them into a product, or, and initially I think we kind of said, well, let's use them as replacement issues, right? Instead of putting it in a product. And then later on in the years, like some of the collectors spoke, said, well, we rather see them in product. So we decided to put them into product. But initially we didn't know that these cards are even going to make it back. So why have a redemption out there that's going to be lingering and have issues 10 years down the line or 4 years down the line as a redemption issue versus just taking them out altogether? And if we get them back, then we'll populate the space with the cards. So it's not like it's being carried by an upper deck employee and being sold otherwise. It was given to a collector, so they were able to sell it or keep it to that sense.
So this is an issue that I have a personal interest in. So for me, in my journey in collecting hockey cards, the first set I ever built out of the cup was the 0506 signature patches set. And I thought that I had finished the set in 2014. Where I identified 4 cards that weren't on the checklist, and I was pretty confident after obsessively searching every day, trying to find all the cards that I had finished the set. And then last year, I actually found a Jason Spezza, which is also not on the checklist, and I had never seen the card in my life after, searching for these cards. And it's numbered out of 75. I think there's no way that there's 75 of them. So is there any way for people like me who build these sets to know definitively, that the set is done, or could there still be another Jason Spezza card that is, was made, but maybe only 2 of them got out kind of thing? Is that possible?
I couldn't really answer that for you. I do know that. So Spezza was a card that there's a lot of them that came back, not just in terms of just the cup, but he had other cards like the SP Authentic, and he had a bunch of cards for a while. He didn't do a deal, and then he didn't sign cards, which is kind of weird that he wouldn't sign cards, because his father is a huge hockey card collector. He used to rip boxes. In fact, when I had my own, when I started in the business with a flea market, and I met Jason when he was like, I think 7 or 8 years old, and his dad used to buy boxes of cards from me. So I know Jason, not personally, but I know him as a kid, and I don't know exactly what happened in terms of his autographs coming back, but I think it was just one of those things where we just thought there's no hell in chance that these cards are coming back, and they eventually signed them. So I think to today, I think it's probably safe to say you probably got everything out there. There's always the chance of, let's say, like, and you can discuss this with Upper Deck for current policies, is that if it's a redemption, then if it's a card in the set that might be made, maybe just include a couple of redemptions in the product, and at least they're still on the checklist, I guess, rather than it being floating out there. But, if they're holding one of those 2 redemptions or 5 redemptions or 10 redemptions, they're going to be damn pissed off, because number one, those redemption cards being so limited are going to go for a ton of money. And number two, Upper Deck's going to have a hard time replacing those redemptions if they don't come through. So it is a really tough decision to make. But at the end of the day, I think Upper Deck does its best in terms of saying, hey, we got the cards back. Let's get them out to the collectors. It's best to be in collectors' hands. And I don't know why it took you 8 years to finalize and find out that there's a Spezza there. I mean, I don't recall a lot of the cards that came back in or not, but I know that when we're hand packing, and it's usually always with hand packing, right? When we're hand packing, we're like, we don't want these redemption cards in there. No one wants them, so let's take them out if it's possible. Yeah. Unless it's a rookie. And I can tell you stories about there's a Ryan Whitney issue forever with his rookie cards from the Cup. So
yeah, I've heard of this. Yeah, is there a story there with Ryan Whitney?
So with Ryan Whitney, during the Cup, I think he got traded from Pittsburgh to Anaheim, was it? I think it was Pittsburgh to Anaheim. So we sent him the cards, and he had to pack his bags. Well, so this is what he tells me in the story, right? We waited forever, and I actually saw him at a bar after watching the Leafs play the Anaheim Ducks, and Ryan Whitney was there. I'm like, hey, Ryan, I have a question, personal beef here with you. And I think it was already 2 years later after the first Cup came out. And I go, we had these cards sent to you. I work for Upper Deck, and we had these cards sent to you, and you never signed them. He goes, oh, that was when I got traded, and I just had to grab a bag and bolt it. And then I go, well, let me ask you a question then. If we reprint these cards, and we had to go out and buy a game used jersey to reprint these cards, will you sign them? He said, yeah, I'll sign them. And sure enough, we reprinted them, sent it to him, and he got traded again, and he bolted and never signed them again. Eventually, I think after I left Upper Deck, I think Chris Karvin got involved and managed to get them signed by Ryan Whitney. I think probably after he retired, but at least it was done, and it's out there as an RPA, right? So there was 2 cards that was an RPA issues. Ryan Whitney was one of them, and I can't remember the other one. And it got to the point where I just said, just don't even reprint them. Just print the card out like a patch rookie and with no auto, and have a facsimile auto. Just that it's a set filler for people, because I for one get frustrated when there's holes in the set, and that's part of the reason with the limited logos is that even though they're all initials, I don't like knowing that it was supposed to be a 100 card set and now it's only 95. I'd rather it be 100 cards. Yeah. So I'm a set builder at heart, and that's the collector in me, right? So most other people would say, hey, I don't care, shred them then, if that's the case. If it's going to cause so much frustrations in the hobby, then just shred the cards or throw them away, right? For me, it's like, no, I'd rather have 100 cards versus 95. However we can get them out there, let's get them out there and take care of some issues.
Yeah. So my friend Ryan here, he's asking about Brad Park. Do you have any recollection of what might have happened to his cards? I know he's on the checklist in 06-07, but I have not seen his cards. Does that ring a bell at all?
No, that doesn't ring a bell. That's a long time ago, and to be honest, it's Brad Park is a great player back for the Boston Bruins and also the Rangers. When I was growing up, but obviously for any value in the cup, he's not a very valuable card, right? So those are things I won't remember. But is he? So he's part of the set, and you guys haven't seen a card of his.
Yeah, so he's in the 0607 Cup signature packs. So I built that set after I built the 0506 one, and I thought I might have seen one time, but I've not seen one in a very long time, and now I'm kind of convinced it doesn't exist. So yeah, if you know anything
Well,
about it,
let me see here. What was it number two? Does it say numbering on limited logo? Or do you know the numbering
so
on that?
yeah, it's at a 75 because it wasn't it wasn't listed as a short print.
Okay. Yeah. So there are times, like, for example, exquisite collectors out there that there's a great collector. He collects Dr. J, and he asked me, "Is Dr. J is supposed to have a exquisite numbers out of 6?" And I said they exist. Like, I knew that he existed, and I said I'm pretty sure I know who has them all, probably, or has the majority of them. And I was right. When that Puerto Rico collection came about, it was all in there. But Brad Park doesn't really come to mind. But we have these issues come up in multiple sets, so I don't know exactly what happened to them, but I don't have recollection. I try to focus more on the RPAs and the uniqueness of the creative sets and all that, and the aesthetics of the cards. I'm not looking at Brad Park. Like, one famous set that everyone always asks me is the Centennial set for the Montreal Canadiens. It's like, is there a Steve Shutt? Are you sure there's a Steve Shutt? I go, I don't know. I never supervise all the autographs, but if it's on the checklist, I'm sure we have cards. Maybe he only signed 4 or 5 cards. And something else that I would do for any sets. Now, this doesn't apply to the limited logos, but for more other hockey sets, there could be a gold version, let's say a platinum version. So there could be a gold version out of 25, and let's say a platinum version out of 5 or something of that nature. So there's 30 cards there. If the guy only had 38 autographs, well, the 25 may be the most populated card out of 25, and there's the platinum, let's say, out of 5, and we have 35 autos, then we'd be only 5 of the non-parallel version that I would do. So I would typically do that too. So it'd kind of be like you would have to try to find that card to complete your set. And we did that a lot with the Upper Deck game jersey sets. If you notice, like, game jersey cards in UD1 and UD2, you'll find those short prints that go for like hundreds of dollars for the master set collectors. And it could be a guy that's out of the league already. So that does happen. So we will do that type of thing back in the day, short printing stuff that of no significance, like a Brad Park, and it creates value by doing that.
So it might exist, is what you're saying.
I assume if it's on the checklist, it should exist.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not sleeping, but so I want to ask you about how the product came out versus how you envisioned it when you guys first started planning on the product. What were the significant differences between the product that we actually got and the product that existed in your brain when you decided to create it?
Well, and in terms of, like, not the hits, but so much like the aesthetics of the sets and all that.
Either way.
So being a creator of a product, like I said, an architect, when I conceptualize, I'm never happy with anything. There's always going to be certain subsets that I feel could have been stronger. There's always going to be sets that are like, I'm not sure if I like this. So I think, being a collector at heart, we have OCD issues, right? And for myself, it's like, that's why I don't like the thick cards. I don't like the thick cards. I don't like the booklet cards, because at the time when we built those cards, I never seen these cards before. You can never put them into a 9-pocket sheet. I know that cup cards don't go into 9-pocket sheets. I get that. And I get that, there's no horizontal loading top loaders, right? So for me, typically I go back to my collecting days, and every card's a vertical card. Every card should be in a 9-pocket sheet. I get it. They don't belong. They go in one touches, or they get slabs or whatever. But I'm also not a big fan of graded cards for that reason, because I believe in the aesthetics and the organic nature of a card versus a slab card and thinking that needs protection or something of that nature. We have one touches, we have other things to protect it. So thicker cards, double-sided cards. I know I created them, like the double-sided signed shield. I created those cards because we didn't have enough geography on one side of the card to accommodate that. But with that said, there's definitely OCD issues, and so when I fight with those OCD issues is the problem I have with how much I like this card. So one of the things that, especially on Exquisite, I think I fight with some of these issues. Like, for example, I don't like vertically signed cards. So if it's a vertical card and they're signing vertically, I'm not a big fan of that. I like the signature to be perpendicular to the card, where it's on the bottom, in a cleared out area. Or as we talked about, like in some cases of the cards, if there's going to be a signature, I want the signature to be really showcasing the card. So I don't want anything behind the signature to kind of clog up or get kind of confusing with the autograph, or even just doesn't showcase the autograph well enough. Or same thing with patches. I don't like circular patches, like circular die cuts for patches, or I don't like unique die cuts for patches, because I think that when you have a nice patch, when you have 4 or 5 colors, you want to see all the 4 or 5 color breaks, or the breaks of the patch. You want to see the uniqueness of the patch. I get it if you have a 1 color patch, it doesn't look nice, but if you have a 5 color patch and you cover it all up, then that doesn't look nice either, right? So I'd rather be open surface area that people see the patch. So those are things that I fight with. With the cup itself, I think 80 to 90% of the set, I was really happy. OCD issues are going to be exactly the 2 that you pointed out, Amazon endorsement being stickers. The other one is obviously the limited logos, which didn't really fit with the set in the first place, I think, the design. And number 2, the UV issue, where the bubbling of the autographs. But most of the sets are, some of my favorite sets. Like Exquisite numbers are really nice. I'm not a big fan of the honorable numbers, even compared to the Exquisite numbers, right? I like the Exquisite numbers more. But with that said, the Cup title lists, the Hardware Heroes, those are some of my favorite sets. I love Cup title lists. Like that's one set that I don't think Upper Deck has done them for a while, and I think they're missing the boat on that one. That's one of the most sought after. The uniqueness, not only in terms of the design, but the concept behind it, the reason for being, the why it's numbered differently. That's what I like. Maybe it's the Asian in me or the Chinese in me that we like math and we like numbers, but I think there's a lot to be said about numbers. There's the number 8 is always going to be a number that Asians love or Chinese love, because 8 means fortune. I truly believe that, for example, like Kobe and Ovechkin are more popular in the Asian culture because they wore number 8. So that's part of it. But, there's so much about the numbers when you look at the uniqueness of the numbers and what significance. When you say a number like 99 in hockey, we all know who it is. When you say number 9, you know who it is. You ask the question why a lot of players wear 19 or have 9 in their number. You also know the answer to that too as well. Or let's say if you say who wears number 8, we all know that. 87, what's the significance of 87? It just goes on and on. Like numbers mean so much. Like when we talk about stories, a number tells a story in sports. So I think that's where I kind of connect with the products I created for certain numbers. I just love those numbers for that reason. And I think when I say a number, I think collectors resonate with that. And I think some of the uniqueness of the sets that I created, like those title lists or the All-Star royalties, you grasped onto the All-Star royalty idea. Like, it's all different teams and number of times they represent that team in the All-Star game. I think that's critical. And it's not like we planned that together. There was no social media talking about it, but you guys all recognized the idea behind it. And I think when you guys can connect the dots of what I was thinking at the time, creating sets, that theme, it means so much for me. Like when I hear people, so the one kid that collect, Dr. J, I met him when I think he was 18 years old. And he was just at the 19 Chicago National. And obviously I work at a distribution company. I haven't created cards for so long. And my the VP of sales was talking to him. He goes, "What are you guys doing there?" And this is before the whole pandemic boom, and he was, sitting on a couch trading cards. He goes, "We're just trading." So I guess that was the trade night back then. He was sitting outside the Hyatt bar, and he's trading cards with someone else. And he goes, "Well, what do you collect?" He goes, "I collect basketball." He goes, "Oh, who do you collect?" "Dr. J." I'm like, "Wow, this 17-year-old kid's collecting Dr. J at the National." I was like, unique. And then he goes, "What kind of cards you collect?" He goes, "Exquisite." And we all start. So my VP of sales at GTS, he just looks over to me, and I kind of shrugged, and he goes, "You know who that guy is over there?" He goes, "Who?" "I don't know him." He goes, "He's the guy that created Exquisite." And the young kid goes, "No, there's no way he's the guy that created Exquisite. I just tell you I collect Exquisite. The guy that created Exquisite is staying right here." And he goes, so the kid asked me, he goes, did you create Exquisite?" I go, "I did." And he goes, "How do I know that that's the case?" I go, "Well, ask me any question about Exquisite." And, sure enough, he asked me a few questions. He goes, and he started freaking out. He goes, "I can't believe it. You are the guy who created Exquisite." He goes, and then we started talking more, and we talked about some of the Exquisite stuff that I did. And he's like, "Dude, you got to get on some podcasts. You got to tell people like some of these ideas. No one knows so much about Exquisite, and you have all these ideas. You got to come up with these stories." So, and I said, "Well, what attracted you to the Exquisite?" He goes, "The holofoil. The gold holofoil is what just I got just sucked into it, because the gold holofoil." And that was also when I started creating cards, or prior to creating cards. When I saw that gold holofoil, that's what attracted me to a lot of the new ideas for cards. So just in case that if you guys didn't know about this, one of the sets that I was a big fan of was the 94.5 Pinnacle came out of a set called Artist Brews. And there's a deco foil on all those Artist Brews. I believe 94.5 is the year that the baby Patrick Kane is in that set. I don't know if you know about that one, right?
Yeah.
The one where his dad's sitting there and it's baby Patrick Kane sitting on his lap. So that set, there's a foil that's kind of almost like triangular, kind of gaudy looking, but the Artist Proof was all that holographic foil. So I own a Korea rookie of that. I own a Gretzky in that, the Artist Proof. And that's what attracted me, that holofoil. When I went to Upper Deck, even though they did the holofoil, they're like, "No one recognizes that holofoil." I'm like, "Well, wait a second. You guys are designers. You guys are production people. You don't see it, but I'm the guy opening boxes of cards and I see it." So when I say, I hate to say this, I go, I don't think you guys know the impact of this holofoil. It goes, it costs like 3 to 4 times what it costs a regular foil. I go, yeah, I don't care. Collectors opens it and they see that holofoil and it shines, and they like it, because I'm telling you through a collector's eyes. That's what I see. So that's why when I started creating sets, I brought all those older ideas in the 90s back to life, right? So that's part of it. So when someone like him at 17 years old in 2019 tells me it's not holofoil, or when I talk to collectors like that, it's the holofoil. When I talk to you and you're showing through your Instagram, here's the Gretzky All-Star royalty, and this is him wearing a New York Rangers jersey, and this is the number of times that he was an All-Star. That was the idea. So it didn't take me to tell you that was the idea. You recognized it, you saw it, and you collected it. And that's what I want collectors to be, to determine ideas like that, the theming, and organically you guys connect on that level, or we connect on that level, versus me having to teach you and tell you, "Hey, this is what it means." "Oh yeah, well, that's a great idea. You saw it yourself." I'd rather you discover these ideas for yourself, because it means that much more for you as a collector than me telling you what to collect or telling you what it means.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff there. I mean, the Titleists are probably my favorite Cup subset ever, and I would have more of them if they were ever available. I only have 2, but the All Star Royalty is another one of my favorites. So I completely agree. I do wish we could get these types of sets back. That are kind of these living sets that you can update them, and they're very rare, very short printed, and those are the things that I know from talking to I don't know if I run there's a Facebook group that's just for Cup cards that I run, and so I get a lot of the discussion about the Cup through that, and these are things that I know collectors are really craving. So hopefully Upper Deck can bring that back at some point. We do have a lot of questions in the chat, so we'll go through there. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I was going to try to keep this all hockey, but for Alex, he's a Andrea Bargnani, super collector, so I'll let him ask you this question. Do you remember any stories about his rookie year autographs? I guess they were all redemptions.
Yeah, once again, '06. So the tough years on like Exquisite, I created Exquisite in '03 or 04, '04 or 05, '05 or 06. I was really involved. '06 '07, I had to pass on Exquisite because I was more focused on hockey at the time, and I had someone reporting to me, and they did the Exquisite set. Obviously, I helped hand pack '06 '07, and I think that was it. '07 '08, I kind of removed myself. So '07 '08 '08 '09, I kind of removed myself from the whole hand packing procedure because it was just because not only that I had hockey and basketball, I also took on the role of handling the whole product team at that time. So it was just a lot for me to get my, I guess, get my hands dirty and hand pack everything and review everything. In fact, '07 '08, I was so disappointed in the Kevin Durant being a horizontal rookie. I just mentioned to you that, for me, RPA should always be vertical, not horizontal. And that was a horizontal one. And I was extremely pissed off about it. But with '06 '07, Bargnani, it's kind of weird. So if you look at some trends in sports, you'll find that the European players are some of the toughest autographs to get for card companies. And it's like, for example, like Matt Sundin. Forever, I'm a Maple Leaf fan. I love Matt Sundin the day that we traded for him, even though I guess most Leaf fans hated that trade because they gave up Wendell Clark for him, and we overpaid for getting Wendell Clark back afterwards. But with Matt Sundin, I know that in having discussions with people talking to his agent and talking to him, and I don't know if I talked to him or not. He's like, I don't see the need for me to sign autographs in sets. So in European countries where they don't collect cards, they collect stickers, perhaps like from Panini back in the day. They don't see a need for them to sign autographs, and it's kind of confusing because also in the Asian culture, like if you talk to some of the Japanese players, they think receiving money for signing their autographs is kind of like not honorable. They're honored to sign autographs, but then when you talk about like signing autographs for this amount of money, they feel like it's not something that they're very proud of, and that's why a lot of the Asian players don't want to sign autographs because they didn't grow up in a culture of collecting autographs through trading cards, and they didn't grow up in a culture of collecting cards. They grew up in a culture maybe collecting stickers and autographs. Like I think Matt Sundin was the one who said it. He said, "Everyone can get my autograph. Whenever at a practice, at a game, all the fans get my autographs." And it's kind of hard to explain. Yeah, you're right, but yet you have fans all over the world that don't have access to you that want your autograph, in a sense, on a trading card, but they just don't understand that because they were not collectors to begin with. So at least a lot of the North American players, they know what trading cards are all about and the history of trading cards, the grassroots of trading cards, and Europeans just don't have that knowledge. And I think that's probably why there's a disconnect, and they always end up being redemptions a lot of times. And I also believe that Bargnani was not part of the photo shoot in '06 '07 either. So that was also an area where we can get autographs. A lot of European players, like Yao Ming, wasn't at the photo shoot. Let me see here. Darko was at the photo shoot in '03 '04, but I think some of the other Europeans that got drafted were not there. So, visa issues or other type of issues that happen. Perhaps they have like international team commitments and all that. So those could be the reasons.
Sorry, Alex. So we have another question here from Decoy Cards. Are there any specific designs that you never got to make for whatever reason? I'm assuming the ones that you wanted to make.
There always is. There always is. It's interesting. I was talking to somebody and said, they're like, how good do you think you could be at creating card sets since you've been away for a long time? I go, to be honest, I'm full of ideas now. There's so many ideas that have never come to fruition because so when you're creating sets, the tough part is always going to be creating sets that aren't well received. The well received ones, like the cup, come on, dude, it's every single set. It's fun to build, but it's easy to build. It's like, okay, signature patches, limited logos. For me, it'd be, let's say I update All-Star Royalty and Cup Titleist. Okay, what else do we create? Then that's when we came up with those ideas. Like, I can't remember what it's called, enshrinements, the ones with the black paper and the holographic foil that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ones, like, I kind of like them. I didn't kind of like them, but they did, it served its purpose, and I think there's a lot of people that collect them today. So those enshrinements, I love those cards. And I typically would go always like, I love holographic. I love the color black. For all of you that may not know, so black hockey existed, black basketball existed, but Exquisite was supposed to be called black. It wasn't supposed to be called Exquisite, and the whole name got squashed by a senior executive. So we had to change the whole name to Exquisite. But later on, when that executive left the company, then we started coming up with black hockey and black basketball. And in fact, I don't know if you guys know this, back in ice hockey, I introduced black ice in as an unannounced insert in ice hockey. I don't know if you even know that, Mitch. So, and the reason why I didn't announce it, I said, well, I grew up in Canada, and I grew up in Toronto, where we always know the terminology black ice. And I said, you don't know you're going to hit black ice when you hit it, and then you spin out and you're holding on to your dear life because you might get, T-boned by a truck on the highway or something like that when you hit black ice. So I said, in this case, we're not going to announce the black ice, and when you hit it, it's going to feel good. It's not going to be a feel scared now. So that's why, back in the day with no social media, no one knew about that. But when people hit it, it was like, well, what is this black ice card? And it was the acetate ice card done in black. I don't know if you guys remember that at all. I think the majority of them were all quad jersey cards or quad patches. This is something simple that we just didn't announce being in the product. So things like that, like not only the fruition of certain ideas, but even some of the ideas, like in terms of how you're going to insert it. Is it announced? Is it not announced? A lot of the sets that I built also has some sort of memories or expression of my own, my own life. Like, for example, there's certain sets that, for example, there's a set that I did when I was at Panini, and it's a tribute to Madonna, which a lot of people didn't know. And am I a huge Madonna fan? No, I wasn't, but I used to DJ, and then at the time, the first ever EP I bought as a teenager was done by, I bought two famous artists, they call them EPs, 12 inches, right, extended plays. One was Run DMC's first ever hit called It's Like That. And the other one was this underground club, big, superstar that no one knew about. It was Madonna. And when I bought that EP, I liked it because it had a lot of synthesizer music, good for fade-ins, fade-outs for DJing. But, when I heard that song and I heard a couple other songs, I said, man, this woman's going to be a huge pop star, huge superstar, right? And everyone's like, yeah, okay, what do you know about singers? So when I said that, it's almost like prospecting rookies. Like, I used to buy comic books for first appearances, like first appearance of Bishop or first appearance of Gambit or first appearance of, other characters in comic books. And you're prospecting. And when I started DJing, I wanted to be the first to say, hey, U2 is going to be this amazing group when I bought their first ever EP, or let's say Madonna. So the set that I built was actually named after her greatest hits album called Immaculate Collection. So those are the type of things. It's just a reflection of, what I grew up with, and not because I love Madonna, but the fact that I prospected her and said she's going to be a huge superstar, and she is. Like, I won't tell you about the 500 that I thought was going to be big stars that never became a big star, but for Madonna, I can say I was right. So the chance that we were right as a collector and we prospected right, then we're like, hey, I was right. We want to show off when we're right, and we don't want to show off when we weren't right. So that set is named after for that reason, after Madonna, not because I love Madonna, but that's her greatest hits album. So anyways, so there's just a reflection of, of who I am as a person. And there's sets that I can tell you about if I tell you the ideas behind it, you're going to say, wow, that's unique. Like, I never thought of that. One of the sets I did in basketball was called Reflections. And in Reflections, I was coming up with all these different ideas. So Reflections was built, and I don't think we did a Reflections hockey. But at the time, chromium was not available. It was a trademark technology. It was only available to tops, and Upper Deck didn't have that technology available for us. So we created a product called Reflections. And what's interesting about Reflections is that I wanted to do like, well, maybe it's a player and a player that plays exactly like them, similar style, right? You can say like maybe a Kyrie Irving and AI or something like that, or something that as a reflection of the other one. But I said to myself one night, and where do we see a reflection? It's in the mirror. And I said, well, when I look in the mirror, I see myself. So that bridged on the whole idea of we had double-sided, which I said I don't like double-sided signed cards of the same player. Because I said, when you look in the mirror, who do you see? You see yourself. So why not have Jordan on the front and Jordan on the back, and he signs both, but maybe one in a home and away jersey or something like that. We had LeBron sign, one side his autograph that he signed formally, and his autograph that's signed on a card. And we asked him to sign his formal autograph, like his cursive one. He did it, and those are numbered to 2. So that was the idea, was the first ever double signed of the same player. And we also did patch versions, not signed, I think out of 10. But that was one night, just like I was just having a creative block, and I didn't know what to do. And I was looking at a mirror and saying, shit, we've never done a double-sided of an autograph card of the same player. Why not just try that, right? So that was the idea. No one knew about that idea. There are set collectors for that set, which is great. There's 2 guys going after that set, and I think one's in Japan and one's in Germany. So the fact that I said Germany, if you guys collect basketball, you probably know who it is. But those are things that I wish more people have recognition that Reflections was like that versus Cup or Exquisite. Cup or Exquisite are usually the easiest to produce, to create. And for me, it's like when I go back to do Upper Deck, SP Athletic, Cup Hockey, I don't need to improve a lot. I just need to one-up it, right? Because every year it comes out, it sells really well. So for me, it's like I have a ton of ideas still, all kinds of ideas. Like I kept some of these ideas for 20 years. There's ideas when, let's put it this way, there are ideas that I have when the day I walked into Upper Deck that have not even come to life yet. So that's 23 years.
What are you going to do about it?
Nothing really. I mean, a lot of them require a heavy dose of execution, and it's going to cost a lot of money. But if I have a chance to create products again, then that's something that I would think about doing and do it uniquely, right? So there's always ideas out there, and once again, there's ideas out there that may not be accepted by the collecting community. In fact, I don't believe that Cup or Exquisite was accepted by the collecting community. I just recently had this discussion at the National where everyone's like, come on, dude, everyone knows that Exquisite was going to do well. No, if you go back to 2003, when I had to fight over with our executive team at Upper Deck saying we're going to create this $500 per pack product, they laughed at me. I went to do feedback panels with a bunch of stores and collectors like, you're crazy doing this high-end stuff. It's never going to perform well. Because at the time, $100 a pack was the highest, and it didn't really perform. So I said, well, if I take it to the next level, they said, yeah, if it doesn't work out 100, what makes you think it's going to work out 500? Or in hockey, I think the most expensive was Premier Collection, which was supposed to be called Ultimate. But Premier Collection was $100 a pack, and it didn't perform as well as it was the Cup, right? So those are things that you always have in the back of your mind. Like back in the day of 03 or 05, it's not unlike today where all this high-end product at thousands of dollars or $5,000 a box all fly. Breaking online was not a reality back then. So, but there are still always ideas. There's always ideas. I have brand names. I have everything in my head, and I'm always still. My mind's not gone away. My body might be a little bit older and not as functionable, but my mind is still there in terms of coming up with ideas.
Well, I hope one day we're able to have some of those ideas come back into fruition. If they're as good as the ideas you've had in the past, I know that would be a great service to the hobby. We do have a couple more questions here I just wanted to get to. So Al wants to know, I don't know if you've seen these. So the first year that Upper Deck put Exquisite into the Cup, which was 14-15, they had these 3-panel hand-painted art cards. Have you ever seen these? Do you have any feelings about them?
Well, I mean, I always have feelings about Exquisite and the Cup name and all this stuff. I think it was 15-16 was the first year Exquisite was introduced back, maybe as a painting that I didn't know about. In fact, in 15-16, I know that we had lively discussions because I was part of the distributor group providing feedback, and there was a whole discussion about Exquisite being its own brand. And I had to go on do a whole monologue saying, well, you can't do that because of the reason why Exquisite was built in the first place and why Cup was built in the first place, right? So, if Cup is known as the holy grail of hockey, how can you have something like upending the holy grail of hockey, right? And to be honest, there's a reason why Cup and Exquisite always link together. In fact, in many of the Exquisite collectors call Cup Exquisite Light. I don't know if you guys know that, because there's limited logos in Exquisite, there's limited logos in Cup. There's a lot of similarities. The Titleist exists in both sets, right? So the primary reason, and for the benefit of all you collectors, there was that discussion as should Exquisite be included as the name instead of the Cup. And the primary reason was, if I put the name at Exquisite, there'll be the pressure of changing that price point to $500 to $600 a box. And I didn't think that was fair for the hockey collectors. I put a lot of emphasis on hockey, the hockey community, and I think that out of all the different sports, the strongest collectors group is in hockey. Now, that doesn't dictate value per player. So a Gretzky doesn't sound like a Jordan or a LeBron or that nature, or even a Kobe, right? Like, he sells for a lot less. But the array of players that people collect is way more bigger than any other sports. Like, there'll be guys that collect Brad Park, we're just talking about. Well, maybe not Brad Park, but certain 500 goal scorers, and people are gung ho about collecting them. There's a lot of Europeans, like the Koivus, have a strong collecting base for a while. Zetterberg had a strong collecting base, and Datsuk. And I think that's great about the hockey collecting community. In fact, I also know that, for example, the Expo. The Expo is the second, like, as Jeremy Lee would say, it's the second best show after the National, and I agree with him. But I go for the collector base, it's the number one show. People collect all kinds of oddball stuff, collect players. They go back and do their PCs from players like 50 years ago, and they're still collecting for whether it could be a tabletop player or a standee or toothpaste heads or all this stuff. And I grew up with that. And I think the collector community in hockey is that there's a lot of collectors that help each other out. I don't care if it's for your PC and I'm losing. I'm okay with that because I know it's going to a good place and it's going to a good home. And that is the essence of a community. The community is stronger than hockey than ever. So that's why when I built the Cup hockey versus Exquisite, I really wanted to protect the hockey community in many ways, and price point was one way of doing it. Also, the fact that the US dollar and the Canadian dollar exchange is a factor too. So, that's always in flux. So if the Canadian dollar is only at, 150 versus $1, well, Cup hockey at $350 is really almost $600 for them. And I hate to say it, when you're earning $600 in Canada versus the US, it's not the same. So their disposable income is a lot less than in the US. So I have to always be sensitive to the Canadian market because of what they represent to the hockey community.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's part of the reason, and that's part of the reason why, like I said, when we were hand packing it, we decided to stop and cut the number of cases down to create better hits for everyone, and make it, reassure ourselves that we would be able to come back with the Cup a second year.
Yeah, and those first few years of the Cup, to this day, people put those in a higher echelon for the most part. So I wanted to ask you kind of a fun question. So, what was if there is a story behind the foam and the decoys? So some people don't even know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah. So initially, cup hockey was designed to be built for 4 cards, I believe, right? 4 cards or 5 cards, I can't recall. And when you get a 4 card pack or 5 card pack, you would get a foam so that we had all this extra space so the cards wouldn't hit against the box. And unfortunately, if you think about it, like if you had something big in the box, that's what everyone says. Oh, if you have a foam box, that you could be huge hit. It's not the case. If it's a good RPA, then it would be a foam box too, right? So when I created the cup or exquisite, I've always created extra cards. So so that make sure one, if there's a redemption, then we can swap out that redemption for something else, right? So there's always extra autograph cards, there's extra patch cards and everything, and there's a lot of extra cards. And and let's say if there's a pack that we felt that was kind of lackluster, like the hit of the box, wasn't as strong as we hoped it would be, then we would add additional hits to it. So that's why we had additional hits, and like guys would open a box of cup and exquisite, and they always complain. They're like, "Man, I got 8 cards and I got 3 base cards," and they're always they call into customer service like, "I got 3 base cards. I got ripped off." I go, "No, if you read the specs of the box, it's supposed to be you're supposed to get 5 cards. We just threw the extra 3 extra base cards or 2 extra base cards and an additional hit in there. So if you like, you can return those 2 additional base cards and the extra hit, the weakest hit back to us if you want." But people always complain. So it's like it got to the point where it's like, should we even throw an extra base card? We just shred them all. And that's the reality of it, is that when there's extra cards in there, it was done so because we had extra cards and we're just throwing it in the pack to give a bonus. But no one ever treats that as a bonus. Everyone treats like every collector out there will say, "I got ripped off. I got 3 base cards when I should have got something else." But it clearly states that you get 5 cards a pack or 4 cards a pack, and you got extra cards. So when we hand pack it, we're able to do that. When we're going through the machines and machines are sorting it for you, you'll never get extra base cards or extra cards instead. Not that you want them in upper deck or something like that, but if you got extra young guns, you complain that it wasn't, McDavid or something like that too. So that that's just the nature of the beast. The foam was to protect it, and then later on, I think we got away from the foam when we added decoys, um, because something had alerted us to remove the foam. Needless to say, but everyone always complained like the damages would happen because they're in that box, and then thus we went to a bigger box with the foam inserts. All those things were created because of not so much did it really protected the cards, but more of a perception. That's what I would say, so that people don't keep on saying these cards like keep on the corners getting damaged because it's inside the box. So you notice that National Treasures don't have that foam insert. You notice that high-end other cards don't have that insert. So it's not really the case, but it was a perception that we listened to the collectors and we wanted to make sure that any of this fear that you have of cards getting damaged inside the box was erased from your experience. The last thing I wanted to have is that part of breaking products or opening packs, it's an experience. You sit down, you prepare yourself to open this $500 or $1,000 box, and any aspect of you sitting going, why did they do this? Why did they do this, or why didn't they do this? Then I want to take that all away from your experience, because that kind of ruins your experience. So that's the reason why we did the foam inserts and all that. It's more perception than anything else.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, Kurt, we're about the 80-minute mark almost. So I don't have anything else I want to ask you for this interview, but I really appreciate you being so gracious with your time. Is there anything else you want to say to the Cup community?
Well, I mean, if you guys want more questions for me to answer, I can do so now. I mean, I'm already on here now, so I gladly give up more of my time now than to have to do a part two, and with the introductions that involve and take away more time. But
Sure.
if you have any other questions, I mean, shoot. If you don't have them, then you guys always can hit me up on IG, or maybe I'll just join your Facebook group and I'll see if I can answer some of the questions in your Facebook group too as well.
Yeah, that would be great to have you in there for sure. So Alex, you said Calvin, who's a friend of ours. I think he meant to address this question to you.
I do. So in I guess my best card that I own is when the pandemic started and I saw what was going on. The two cards I always wanted to own, not so much for me, and part of the reason, not the problem, but part of the reason why I decided to spend this kind of money is I'm an older dad, so for many years when I was creating products, my kids would be the exquisite, the cups, and all the products I created. Those are my kids. So only until I left Upper Deck and I lived a year in China. I met my wife, and we in 2018 we had our daughter. So, and she doesn't know too much about my career or my tenure at Upper Deck or Panini and creating cards. So I really wanted to buy her two cards for her to own, and she can do whatever she wants with them. So unfortunately, I don't have $1 million sitting around to buy the LeBron rookie at the time, and now they're down to like I think 300 or three and change. So I still don't have that kind of money to spend on a LeBron rookie, but I end up buying a one color Sidney Crosby RPA. And Sidney just means a lot more to me than Alexander Ovechkin. Primary reason is one, I'm Canadian, he's Canadian. Also, one of the final things, I never got to see the Leafs win the Stanley Cup. Maybe I still will, but one of the greatest moments of my tenure at Upper Deck, or my life, my bucket list, was I did go to the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, and I did attend that game when Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal. So that means a lot to me. That's probably the closest I'll see the Leafs win the Stanley Cup, even though there's no Leafs in that team. But at least I saw a red Maple Leaf win the gold medal, and it was a big moment for us, right? And I can tell you all kinds of stories of my little venture into Vancouver for a week, and it was a crazy time because I went to 5 events, and all 5 events Canada won gold medals. So I was like, man, I'm 5 for 5. So, but outside of that, it's something that I'll never forget. I went with some good friends of mine, and then Upper Deck came later and joined us, and that's when we went to see the final game. So Crosby means that much more for me. And to me, someone asked me, well, why would you want to buy a single color? I go, it didn't matter. The single color came with a lot of provenance. I knew all the owners of the card beforehand, so I'd have to worry about it being swapped out, I guess, the patch or that. And single color probably makes it assured that I wasn't swapped out from a multicolor to a single color. And number two, I love the card for the aesthetics of the card. So if I didn't build the card right, then a single color would look horrible, right? But to me, a single color looks fine. And the other thing I like about Sidney Crosby is that, unfortunately, I don't feel the same way about McDavid or Bedard, is that Sidney Crosby has a beautiful autograph. Like, he's one of the players that has a nice autograph in the last probably 15 years, or since he joined the league. I mean, obviously, we all notice the similarities with his autograph with Gretzky, but I'm not a big autograph collector. Their autographs is kind of lazy, or give up autograph, or something I just don't like. I think your autograph should be an art piece, right? So I think Sidney reflects that.
Yeah, I agree. He does have one of the best autographs among active players, in my opinion. Alex also wants to know if you have any thoughts on LeBron saying that he owns a couple of his exquisite cards.
Well, so what cards he owns, I don't know. I know that was in reference to his gold RPAs. I can safely say that I know it wasn't given to him from Upper Deck, because I held. So as I said, the exquisite product, exquisite basketball 0304 was the first ever product we hand packed, and the first night was decollating than it was collating. And what I mean by decollating, I made an error. So guess what? We make errors, and when we see it, we got to correct it. So I spent about 6 hours going through a mix, taking out all the LeBron rookies, taking out all the golds, and so I counted all of them. There's 23 golds. There's 99 rookies. I saw all the 101s in the set. I saw the 3 dual logo mans, and I also decollated Carmelo Anthony's too. And the reason why I did that, there was a player by the name of Kyle Korver, and in the exquisite sell sheets, the solicitation, it says 1 RPA per box. Well, Kyle Korver was mixed in because I forgot that we didn't get a jersey, but we always have these kind of like just in case we don't get the jersey, he had an autograph card only. So his autograph card would only be an autograph only, and it wasn't an RPA. So I kind of screwed up in terms of my number of hits, like the RPA being in the box. So I took out all the Kyle Korvers and I actually collated them with the LeBrons and Carmelos so that people get an RPA with a Kyle Korver. So if you hit a Kyle Korver, you would probably likely hit a LeBron or a Carmelo or something huge inside the pack. So with that being said, I even had this comment to the guy that was helping me out. I was like, this is the first time we hand pack a product. So we're sitting here with 99 LeBrons, the 23 LeBrons, all the 101s, the 3 logo man, 2 logo mans, you know, and I said to him, I go, you know how I always say that I would never steal unless it was worth it, right? And he said, yeah. And I go, well, you know that we pick up all these cards and leave Upper Deck, and you know, obviously there's no security when we're doing it. And I said, we would be able to go to the Grand Caymans and open a hotel now. And he looked at me, he goes, would you do that? And I said, mind you, this is like after like 6 or 8 hours of decollating, and I just looked at him, I looked up to the sky, and I said, no, I would never do that. Number one, I don't want to have eyes in the back of my head, right? Number two, is not something that I would do, and number three, these cards really belong in the hands of collectors. So for us, the next day when we got back, we collated all those cards and out they went into the boxes. But yeah, and people would say, you know, why would you take 1 or 2? I'm like, nah, it doesn't matter. If you take 1, you might as well take 10, right? Like the penalty is the same no matter what happens. I'm gonna get fired if I get found out about it. It's not worth the hassle. Look, I love my job too much at that time. I was having a good time working there. You know, in fact, I took a huge pay cut to go pursue a passion of mine, which is creating trading cards and also working for the company I always wanted to work for in Upper Deck. So ever since '89, I was like, man, this would be a great job, just creating trading cards. And I had that dream job. Why would I want to do anything to jeopardize it?
So it kind of leads into the question like Trevor's asking. So what made you get out of that?
So after 10 years at Upper Deck, you know, so here's something that I will say. I love collectors. While I love collectors, I also sometimes hate collectors. And it's not to hate on collectors in general or certain people. It's just that the demands of collectors, you know, it never goes away. Like you bend over backwards to help someone out, and then it's like, oh, thanks, you're the best and all that, and then there's other issues, right? And then the whole argument, like, you know, game use versus rookie photo shoot, or hard sign versus, you know, stickers. These things, even though I've told many times the pros and cons, everyone's just like, well, I don't like it. You know, what was the reason again? And I have to explain things over and over again. And it's interesting because you have feedback panels and you have collectors fighting over themselves, trying to determine what is the better route. Or so one of the things that we did was, you know, during my tenure, we bought Fleer. And we had at the time, we had these Diamond Club events where the elite collectors all got together. They got to have free dinners and got to meet athletes. In fact, the first one was at the Wynn Hotel in Vegas, and LeBron was the guest of honor. So everyone got a picture of LeBron. And at that thing, they were saying, man, Karvin, jambalayas. We love the jambalayas. And they're like, but you know what really would take jambalayas to the next level? Like, I already know your answer. They're like, autographed jambalayas. I'm like, no, we're not going to do autographed jambalayas. You know, or autograph with a piece of patch on it. I go, okay, hold on, guys. Jambalayas is an insert designed in the 90s where there's no autographs on it. It finally, we reproduced the jambalayas and they're selling for $300 to $500 a piece. What makes you think that we put autographs on them that's going to enhance the value, or is it going to take away from the non-auto version? And on top of it, there's players like Will Chamberlain could have a jambalaya, right? He's not going to sign anything. So, and do you want redemptions for autographed jambalayas? I'm like, oh yeah, you're right about that. And I was like, when things work, don't try to overthink it, but try to explain that to a collector. Or the one guy that had an 8-player autograph all hard signed, which I'm not a big fan of because I know that comes the issue of redemptions. They're all signed in paint pen, right? This is in black basketball. And it was like 8 of the nicest, or the greatest players of all time. It was Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, like 8 GOATs, right? And the guy, unfortunately, one of the autographs, as you guys know, with paint pens, it blotches or it drops or it smudges, right? And the guy shows his card. He goes, "I'm so pissed off with this card." I'm like, okay. And he goes, "Why would you put this card in?" I go, "Well, we got 7 good autographs on here, and there's one not so good. So for the cost of the 7 autographs, which amounts to probably close to $1,500, I'm going to rip up and shred this card." And it's still a beautiful card, is it not? And everyone's looking at it, "Wow, that's a gorgeous card." Yeah, that one autograph is not perfect. And then he goes, "I can't believe with such an expensive card that you would choose this card to make a mistake on." I'm like, "Well, first off, we don't choose our mistakes." So I go, "A mistake is a mistake. The pen wasn't primed properly and all that." I go, "But at the end of the day, you have to admire the effort that we went to send this card 8 times to each athlete, and 7 of the 8 was perfect, and the one guy has one small smudge. Like, I apologize for that card, but if you want, I'm sure anyone here will buy it off you for a discounted price if that was the case, right? But we don't choose and decide which cards we make errors on or make mistakes on, right?" And every other collector was laughing at that time. And I was just like, but this is what we have to deal with in terms of collectors. So some of the things that when I designed the cards was that, for example, black borders, it was a no-no. But when I went to join Upper Deck or even Panini, they said no black borders because collectors complain about damages. And I was like, yeah, but the aesthetics of the card is way more important than whether the card is damaged or is gradable or not gradable. If you notice, all the exquisite and cup cards, they don't grade well. There's a reason for that. Because I allowed, when we talked about these products, I said, design what looks the best. Don't worry about all the norms of the do not do's. Design what looks the best. So I like black bordered cards because when you're opening a pack of cards, like when you're playing Hold'em poker or you're playing any type of card game, people like to slow roll. They like to squeeze their cards. Well, you see a black edge and you know it's a 101. Look at all these breakers now. When they open the Prism Black 101, they slow roll it. That's the idea. When you get the black edge, you automatically get excited and you do the slow roll. And that's the psychological aspect of opening a pack of cards. And that's way more important than having a 101 stamp with no colored edge. I know it takes away from grading. It takes away from it doesn't take away the damages that can occur from it. But at the end of the day, it's more about the experience than just whether it's a commodity card that can be sold for a lot more money. So those are part of the reasons why I got out of it, because I was tired of explaining those things day and night. Also, at the end of my tenure at Upper Deck, I was helping out a lot of customer service issues. I was working weekends doing stuff on customer service, replacing redemptions. I remember this one call. I called someone in Washington, and it was 7:00 on a Sunday night at Upper Deck. I was doing a redemption replacement because someone had asked me to help, and so I called them up, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, I want to replace your cards." I'm like, "It's like you're calling me at 10:00 my time in Washington on a Sunday night to replace my cards when I've been asking for, some sort of replacement for like 3 years." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Sunday night," and he goes, "What's your name?" I go, "Karvin," and he's like, "Karvin as the guy that created the cup?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Of all people, you're calling me?" Then I go, "Yeah, can we just get this done? I want to go home." So we get the replacement done. And he goes, "Wait a second, I have some questions about the cup with you." I'm like, "Okay, all right, just shoot, let's hurry up." And every conversation that anyone knows who I was ended up being an hour long instead of being like a 10-minute discussion of how to replace your cards. So those are things that that's why I said, I don't mind joining these podcasts and talking about it. But at the same time, when it's the same discussion over and over again, it gets tiring. And basically it's tough. It's tough to really satisfy collectors in some ways. But I will say the majority of collectors, I love collectors. I love the community. You can put Wayne Gretzky in front of me, Bobby Orr in front of me, Sidney Crosby. I'll spend 10 minutes with them and I'll spend 3 hours with you guys because, you are who I am, right? I am a collector and I love being part of that community. and you guys know exactly what you like, even in my past work, and what you appreciate. And that's what I love about the hobby. Not so much it has to be my work; it could be anybody's work. You love the aesthetics of a card, you love its hard sign, you love these certain rookies. I love listening to the stories, right? I love listening to the tale of what you gave up for that card, or why you collect that card, or why it resonated with you. Same way as it would for me. It's tough for me to collect because there's so much that if I said I want to collect stuff that I impacted in the hockey cards or in the basketball cards, there's too much to collect. So I'll let my daughter be the one to decide what she wants to collect when she grows up. So hopefully within the next 2 years, I'll probably introduce her at a show, and hopefully she can do the $1 challenge and see how far she can get away with it.
Yeah, those are really cool too. Yeah, I've seen some really cool ones of that. So do you think, have we seen the last of Karvin Cheung designing sports cards?
For now we have. I mean, who knows what the future brings. I'm
Yeah.
getting at the age where maybe it's probably too late to venture back in, but I can safely say, 13 years from, let's see here, 10 years from my last set, right? So 10 years from my last set, I mean, there's definitely a lot of pent up ideas, and, that can work or might not work. But once again, there's a lot of ideas that people might not even recognize or even accept it. So I have some crazy ideas that I was talking to someone that said this would change the whole entire collecting community. I go, it would, but I bet you most collectors would just frown upon it. So for an example, a set that I created in 0910 Exquisite was a tribute to LeBron. And I know it's still being done for the Exquisite card for 0304 with the same number of the LeBron card. And in fact, I did it for the Crosby in the 0910, the John Tavares year before I left. There's always been the repeat of the Crosby rookie with multiple sports legends, right? And, when I first did that, no one really liked it. A lot of people didn't like it. The hardcore Exquisite collectors loved the idea of having Barry Sanders as a LeBron card, or Joe Montana, Wayne Gretzky, or Crosby. But it wasn't really accepted in the beginning. So, and in some cases, still certain people don't accept that idea. But I think, but those cards are some of the, I think the most expensive Gretzky card is actually an Exquisite basketball card, right? The most expensive Barry Sanders card is an Exquisite basketball card. So those are indications to me that secondary market recognizes it and has done well. So some sort of ideas like that the hobby hasn't seen, I'd love to bring back to the hobby. So we'll see. Hopefully it's not the last one, but if it is, then I guess I have to write a diary and explain all these other ideas, or let my daughter be the gatekeeper of it, and maybe she can consult for someone else, or sell it to somebody else.
Yeah, that diary would that'd be an interesting auction item.
Exactly. Maybe we'll have to let Ken Golden or Heritage, protect that diary for dear life, and get some of, like, I mean, I still have my notebooks of like the first Exquisite and first Cup sets, but unfortunately, the first initial breakdown of the skeleton of the product, it's just RPAs, number to 99, number to 225, and then signature patches, and then I add as I go. So I don't have a lot of details in terms of some of the inserts, but
yeah,
definitely, those are just, like I said, Cup and Exquisite are easier ones to build. It's the ones outside of that that are tougher. I think today, with the volumes that are being produced, and obviously the amount of dollars that are circulating, these ideas can be even easier to come to fruition. So,
yeah. And so this is the last question we have here is from Al. He says, if a small set was numbered out of 5 or less, would a patch from one jersey be used to complete it, or would patches come from a multitude of jerseys? So I know we've seen in a few sets, there's, I think of like the 07-08 Cup Dino Ciccarelli limited logos has Capitals, North Stars, and Red Wings. So I think he's probably talking about things like that. Are there some that are out of 5 that would even have multiple jerseys used?
Majority of the times, think of it this way: every jersey has a serial number, and whether you're clicking on a field like a box or having to type in the serial number, chances are people don't want to do more work. So you're likely going to see if there's enough pieces from one jersey to cover the 5, we would just go with the one jersey. Now there are times where, let's say, it's what we call like the end of a jersey. So when we look at a jersey and we estimate how many patches are being built from that jersey, there is going to be what we call zero, like almost kind of like zero costing jersey, like the remaining pieces of the jersey or the patches that are left over. Because when we estimate, we have to overestimate it versus underestimate it, because then I'll say we have patches and we don't. So at that point, we may have zero existing on all 3 jerseys, and we say, hey, pull up the Dino Ciccarelli bag and see what we have. And it said, oh, we can get one from the Washington Capitals, we can get one from the North Stars, and one from the other team that you had mentioned, the Red Wings or something like that. So if that's the case, then that probably was what happened.
Okay. Well, Karvin, those are all the questions that we got from the chat. So unless there's anything else that you wanted to chat about, we're at 100 minutes, pretty lengthy interview. So I really appreciate all the insight and your time for this. So is there anything else you wanted to add before we end the interview?
No, I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk about something that existed 17 years ago now, and I'm glad to hear that it's thriving and there's a big fan base for it. So I'll definitely send me the link for the Facebook group, and I'll add in. I can't say that I can answer all questions, but I'll try my best to dispel any rumors or wrong information out there. And moving forward, you guys can always DM me on Instagram. Or reach out to Mitch, and he can ask more questions. More than willing to share with the community, at least get you, the straight information from the horse's mouth. So, but I appreciate the time and appreciate the discussion. And once again, I love being part of the collecting community and just one of you guys. So.
Awesome. Well, I think it has been an awesome, very informative interview. So, Karvin, really appreciate it. And then I will definitely send you the link for the Facebook group. And thanks, everyone. Al, Alex, Doug, Ryan, Trevor, Decoy Cards, Jeff McMahon, Matt. Thank you guys all for sticking around and watching this. And we'll be back with the Hockey Cards Roundtable once the season starts. So this was just a one-off special interview. So Karvin, thank you again. And this interview is over.
See everyone.